Welcome to the Leadership Secrets Podcast, where we bring you no BS, practical advice from the experts that are doing it. Now, here's your host, Lee Lisenby.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Secrets Podcast. This is your host, Lee Lisenby. This is a no BS leadership podcast where we're bringing you leadership professionals who are doing it. So we're not bringing you people who talk about it. We bring you the people who are actually doing it. Today, I got a very special guest on our podcast, Dr. Jamaal Johnston. He is a student of leadership, which we all talk about that quite a bit. So I'm glad to have Dr. Johnston on here. Dr. Johnston is a chief leadership grower at the Leadership Growth and Research Center, which is an organization that specializes in growing leaders through coaching and training. As a leadership coach, Dr. Johnston works with individuals and organizations to increase leadership effectiveness. Dr. Johnston is recognized as an up-and-coming training and development professional in leadership growth and development industry. And Dr. Johnston holds a doctorate degree in business administration. Dr. Johnston, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, so we're going to get into a few questions here with our host, Dr. Johnston. If you don't mind, Dr. Johnston, could you give us a quick introduction, some of the things you've done, currently doing, maybe some passions of yours?
Yep. Of course, leadership is a passion of mine, and it started in high school. I always had an interest in leadership because I saw the effects of good leadership, and I also saw the effects of not so good leadership. So as I kind of started to think about those experiences, it just kind of led me along a natural progression of getting into leadership as a profession. On a professional standpoint, I started in leadership professionally around 2013, and it was with a nonprofit. I did leadership training and development with a group of youth, and we took those young men from their freshman year all the way through, as of this year, completing college. And just with the framework and some of the things we've put in place with those guys, I was like, this process is not that bad, and I might want to introduce it in a for-profit kind of standpoint. And that kind of brought me to where I am now with the Leadership Growth and Research Center, which is a for-profit organization that looks at developing leaders through coaching and training. So kind of brought full circle in the process.
Yeah, that's great. What type of can you give some examples of type of people or companies you're working with?
Yeah, we mainly, as of now, I'm dealing with middle managers, and those are people that have been in the management and leadership space for 5 to 10 years, and they are in a position where they're growing in their leadership, and they're looking for that next move. So we're dealing with those professionals that have been in the game for a while. They're actively leading, but they have a lot of growth potential, and they're looking at those next steps in their progression.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, that's a big demand right there. That middle management piece, man, I tell you, needs a lot of help. One of the things that we talked some about is, personal development. I've seen just in my career, the ones who took this serious were just generally better leaders. And do you have like any personal development habits that you practice currently?
A lot of reading. I try to get as much leadership content as I can digest. Podcasts, audiobooks, regular books, different training seminars and training sessions that I take part in as a student. And the biggest part of that, or the most important part of that mix, is the application of what I'm learning. So a lot of learning, a lot of reading, and then we go back and kind of slow down and look at how do I apply that new knowledge.
Yeah, that's excellent. Reading is a huge pet peeve in mine. I've been an avid reader myself, and I just see so many leaders out there that never pick up a leadership book. They might read a fiction novel, but they won't read a leadership book. That's a good one. Just diving in that a little bit. What types of leadership books out there are you reading currently or in the past that you're really big on?
Anything John Maxwell, of course, and kind of, full disclosure, I'm part of the Maxwell leadership team, so I'm a big fan of John and his team's work. So I try to do about a book a month. So the book for this month was the 25th edition of the 21 Laws, which was redone. So I just finished that a few days ago, and it was a good refresher on the laws itself and a nice new look at some older content that John revisited. So the 21 Laws was the most recent leadership book.
Nice. So how many of Maxwell books have you read?
I think I've done all of his leadership books, and I've done most of his personal development contents, and I think standard communication. The only one he's officially did was everybody communicates if you connect. So I think I've done that as well. So all of his leadership books and some of the other related to growth and communication.
Excellent. Man, he has a lot of books. That's pretty impressive. I mean, he has like what 80 something books now out there.
Yeah, it's close to 100. Close to 100.
That's a lot of books to read. So going back into personal development, do you have any types of morning routines or fitness or nutrition practices that you currently practice?
Yeah, morning routine is an early start. I typically try to get up at 3 or 4 a.m. and that just kind of gives me time to do some personal reflection, get a little bit of studying in, and also some working out. I'm on the other side of 40, so I'm kind of focusing on fitness a little bit. So I'm trying to be as healthy as I can for as long as possible. And also with that early start, it just kind of gives me time to do those things that I wouldn't be able to do once the workday starts. So that's critical for my morning routine, that early start.
I hear that. I'm on the other side of 40 myself. The older I get, I mean, for one, it's easier, I think, maybe to wake up early because I'm going to bed earlier, but that early start. Yeah, I just find, I don't know how you feel about this, but, I currently manage a pretty large team at work. If I don't get up early and do those things and get myself prepared for the day, I'm just not a very effective leader. So I always thought the morning routine is pretty powerful.
Yeah, and it seems like on those days where I'm a little late, just seems like everything is off. Something's not right, and I don't have that regular start. So it seems like I'm trying to play catch up throughout the day. So that's one thing I really try to focus on to make sure I get every morning.
Yeah. There's a professional golfer, Ernie Els. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he his routine before a tournament or whatever the day of, I guess, he would arrive like so many hours early, like 6-7 hours early, and he'd be the first one there. And he said he did that so his whole routine in the morning before he tees off was kind of in slow motion. Like he said, I'll dress slow, I'll tie my shoes slow. Everything I do is intentional and in a very slow pace. That way I don't try to rush through that routine and get in those bad habits. I'm a golfer, but I was thinking, man, that's so true in so many different ways though, because that's true in business too. If you start rushing your morning, you're late and you're stressed, you have anxiety in the morning, it carries over throughout the day.
Yep.
Awesome, man. So you talk about reading quite a bit, and which hits home with me. I just think it's so important. Is there any other professional development type habits? I mean, you say you talk about conferences. Anything else you're doing from professional development?
That's the main thing. The reading, absorbing as much leadership content as I can, and of course, the different conferences. Kind of like we talked about before. Our first chat, the IMC, the International Maxwell Conference, which is a 3-day conference that John Maxwell puts on that deals with leadership growth and coaching. That's my slotted conference for this quarter. So just kind of being exposing myself to as much leadership content through different mediums as possible.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. So I'm sure you stay pretty busy in your leadership practices there, and you're at the Leadership Growth Research Center. Is that what it's called?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As far as productivity, that's always somewhat what I've seen leaders kind of struggle with time management. Do you have any type of productivity type hacks that you're using in your life?
Yeah, I kind of smile because when we talk about the growth, project management always comes up, and I always mess with my students, my participants, by telling them it really is no such thing as project management. It's time management. And they're like, what do you mean lead, I manage my time all the time. And I go back and ask him, I said, well, at the very basic, how is time, how is that process facilitated? And through, dialogue and conversation, they say, well, at the end of the day, time at the very basic level is about the sun and its, rotation around the earth or whatever it does. And I said, so if you look at it from that standpoint, how can you manage that process? And they go back and think about it. It's like, well, I really can't. So it's impossible to manage time. Time is a fixed variable and you can't manage it. But what you're really looking at and talking about managing your priorities and managing your schedule. So as far as that piece of the pie, big on managing my schedule, even out to 15 minutes. What am I doing? What do I need to get done today, and what are my priorities? So the self-management and the management of my schedule is the biggest hack that I have as far as productivity.
Self-management, yeah. Yeah, that's huge. That's so true too. Like we can't manage time. Time's infinite. Like it's there regardless. You just manage what you do with that time. I've been reading a lot recently about the law of attraction, and there's a lot of good stuff there. But one thing they talk about is time jumping, like jumping and living the past or the future, always constantly trying to live, and basically you want to live in the present. The present's all we have.
Yep.
And so do those things right now you should be doing, and I'm not giving it credit here by talking about it because I'm kind of disorganized my thoughts. But I mean, I started practicing some of these habits, and like this living the present alone has been a game changer for me anyway. So time management piece, I see a lot of my new leaders struggling there because, well, for one, they want to continue doing the job they did before they got promoted, and they can't release that piece of it. That's hard for them. That's what they're competent at. But then they have all these administrative tasks they got to do now in addition. Then they have this team that's need their time and attention all the time. So yeah, that's one of the hardest pieces I think for leaders is managing that piece of it. That's good. That's good advice. Thanks, Dr. Johnston. So most of our listeners, we're aiming towards the frontline leaders, new leaders. So you're dealing more with the middle management. What advice would you give for a new leader who's just starting their journey?
Biggest piece of advice would be, practice your craft. And if we look at leadership as a skill set, it is a craft. So part of that is exposing yourself to that leadership content and then putting into practice. The leadership thing is a journey. So starting off, just like with anything new, you're not going to be great and awesome from day one. So for new leaders, just for them to understand that is a process, and most things that you start off at, you're not that great, but as long as you stay consistent and you put a little work in and a little focus, then you'll get better as you progress. And that's kind of what we see with the leadership space in general. It's a progression, it's a growth, it's a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're never going to be a expert leader. I found. I mean, there's no great leader out there that claims to be an expert at it. They're just constantly growing. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's one of the reasons when when I'm speaking to people and writing and doing training, I never claim to be an expert in leadership. So I always say, I'm a student of leadership, because once you take on that expert title, it puts everything in a different perspective. And how can you be an expert in something that's always evolving, always changing, even if it's just how you interact and relate to that subject matter? So, I proudly say, I'm just a student of leadership. I'm still learning and growing in this space.
Yeah, that's so true. You put that really well. It's always changing. Yeah, how can you be an expert in something that's always changing and evolving? That's so true. Yeah. So Simon Sinek is one of my favorite guys to follow on leadership. He just puts things so elegantly about leadership and hits on all the pieces that I truly believe in. He has a comment about he's never seen a great leader claim to be an expert at leadership. We're all students of leadership. With that in mind, you talk about books quite a bit. I always have a couple of different examples of books for my leaders. Actually, this book I have it out because I'm interviewing this person next. My podcast is Jim Hewling, Four Disciplines of Execution. I think it's just a great book as far as the time management piece we talked about. But for any new leader, I always recommend this book, It's Your Ship. I don't know if you ever read that one. The commander in the U.S. Navy that took over the worst ship in the Navy when he took it over as commander, and it turned into the best ship in the Navy. And stuff he did was 100% leadership. I mean, there was very little tactics in this book. It's just all about like sound, fundamental leadership and how he did it. It was brilliant. That's the book I first recommend, and I have a few Maxwell books as well that I recommend my leaders read. But as far as you, if let's say you were leading a team and you were promoting new leaders, what book would you tell them in the beginning they should read first?
My go-to is 21 Laws from Maxwell. I mean, that's just because of the way that the content was established and written. First of all, it's an easy read. I mean, you can go through most of John's books in a few days if you just go at it all in with the reading. But more importantly, it's applicable. And as I've seen from the start of my leadership journey, those laws always apply. And as I'm seeing, they're timeless. So no matter what industry, no matter where you are in your leadership journey, those laws apply to the leadership framework. So I always start with the 21 Laws. And actually, that was one of the first leadership books. Matter of fact, the first leadership book that I read, the 21 Laws, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Yep.
Wow. Is that what got you started with the Maxwell Group?
Yes, actually it was. I read that book years ago, and then I was looking for, once I got into the training space, I was looking for a resource because at that time I wasn't comfortable developing my own content. So I was looking for an organization that already had content made, and that's what got me with John Maxwell. And so now I kind of got those guys, and of course they have tons of resources as far as content. But even with that, using their content, I got into a place where now I'm still getting into a space where I'm developing my own content. So having access to their content has kind of put me in a position where I am more confident and I'm able to start developing my own content, which I think at the end of the day, with the training space, it puts you in a different area if you are teaching from your own material.
Are you writing a book right now?
I know, I'm not writing a book.
Okay. I hear content. I'm like, well, you might be.
But I do a lot of stuff with the leadership and growth content as far as training. So creating my own curriculum, creating my own training programs is where we are currently.
Oh, nice. Do you have any online courses, or is it mostly face-to-face?
Mostly face-to-face. Mostly face.
Okay. Excellent. Wow. So who out there right now, or you say you read a lot of books and you mentioned some great authors. Is there any other like podcasts or influencers out there in the space that you think leaders should maybe start following?
I like Robin Sharma. He's in the I don't know if he's an official leadership guy or just one of the in the personal development space, but his style and his approaches kind of resonate with me. He was one of the guys. One of his books, the first books that I read, I think it's the 5 a.m. Club, and it kind of talks about how effective you are by getting up that much earlier. So I think that was one of the first books that I read of his. Then I kind of just connected with him after that, just from his approach to development and leadership.
Does he have a podcast?
Yes, I don't know if it's he's has a few shows he's done. I don't know if it's an official regular podcast, but there are a few podcasts that he's done that's out there.
Yeah, I love that 5 a.m. Club. I read that. So I'm prior military, so I've always kind of gotten up early, but I've noticed morning routine, I'll just sit around and read emails and get on social media and do those things in the morning. And I'm like, man, I'm wasting my time. I waste an hour in my morning from 5 to 6 every morning, just, doing stuff like that. So I read that 5 a.m. Club book, and it was brilliant. And that 20-20-20 principle that he teach about in his book, and how you break those 20-minute increments up into different things. Man, that was brilliant. I like that book. Excellent. I need to look at him. He probably has a YouTube channel out there I could subscribe to. All right. So one thing I've noticed just in my career, and I could be off base here, but this whole podcast is kind of based off this one point, is that I found every leader I've ever worked for has been very unique. Their philosophies are different. Their methods are different. How they speak to people is different. And not all of it's good or bad. I mean, some of them have been really, really good. But one great leader has been different than another great leader in what they're doing. And I found that most leadership books talk about some of the same things. There's some core principles across leadership that most of these books are written off of. What's your this is the Leadership Secrets podcast, and the secret is, what's the secret you found that has worked most for you in your leadership journey?
That's a great question. Now with that, with the differences on leadership, is another one of the things that I highlight. Leadership being a science and an art. So what you just described is, all the leaders that you've had experience with, they kind of understand the science and they know the 1, 2, 3s of leadership. But the art comes in with how they apply their learning, and everybody applies their science a little bit different. So that's why leadership is so dynamic and broad. It's like, every leader that I've had experience with, they do it a little bit differently because they are applying their art and their way of leadership. So now, what was your question about the secret? I kind of got off on a tangent.
Yeah, no. So I think there's always been this core fundamental piece to all great leaders that has been different from leader to leader. And some of those things I cannot find in leadership books. It's just this person, just does one thing really well, and that one thing worked really well. And the secret is basically, what is that one thing that you've done well that you could share with our listeners? That and it doesn't have to be that either. It could be, what's one thing that you've seen great leaders doing that the majority aren't doing?
Okay. All right. I'm gonna give you two. The first one is a little bit nuanced and it's going to be a little bit harder to develop. But having a feel for leadership is just kind of important. And you get that as you go along in the process and you are in those leadership experiences and you learn the craft of leadership. So just having a feel for leadership. But the next, which is I think is critical, and I'm starting to do it now, and I see it in all of those high-level leaders that I deal with, having the ability to coach. So having coaching as a skill set that you apply to your leadership toolbox makes the difference between a good leader and a great leader. Just because of the fact that as you're dealing with people, growing and developing people, you have to have that key skill of coaching to do that effectively. So coaching would be my secret sauce.
Wow, that's great. That's the first one I've heard, coaching, but I totally agree with that. I took that coaching course on the Maxwell program, and that was a game changer for me, and how you go about it a bit differently. And I think just learning that skill set is huge, because it's something we do every day as a leader. We're constantly coaching, and I think the delegating thing can get out of hand sometimes, especially with new leaders. I know I failed there multiple times. When I first became a leader, I just constantly was telling people what to do. I wasn't, empowering them to do these things. I wasn't giving them the responsibilities they needed to feel important and feel fulfilled with their work. And I just was directing, is basically what I did. And I see that happen quite a bit with new leaders. So coaching is a powerful one. That's great. Excellent. Thanks, Jamaal.
Yes, sir. You're certainly welcome.
Well, that kind of brings us to the end of our podcast. Tell the listeners where they can find you. What social media platform? How can they follow you online?
All right, my main stomping ground is LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn just because of the professional aspect, and I kind of use it as my go-to Rolodex as far as keeping up with all my contacts and all of those influences that I'm following. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Jamaal Johnston. I'm in the Richmond, Virginia area. And also you can follow our organization on LinkedIn as well. So the Leadership Growth and Research Center, we're on LinkedIn as well. So that's the easiest place to find us.
Excellent. Yeah, you got a pretty good LinkedIn page there. That's how I found you. So excellent. And I forgot you were in Virginia. Man, I used to live there. I lived there for like 4 years, and both my kids were born in Chesapeake when I was in the Navy.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area, man. I love Virginia. That's a paradise, I think. But, well, good deal. I look forward to seeing you here in I guess 3 weeks at the IMC conference.
Yep.
And any of the listeners out there, the Maxwell Leadership Group is a fantastic organization. And if you ever sign up, you ask for and then the sign up page, they ask for a referral. I recommend you either use me or Dr. Johnston here as your referral, because it comes back to us. So it's a great program, and this IMC conference, I've heard so much about it. I mean, it's people from all around the world come to this conference. The speakers out here are incredible. The classes, the workshops are like top notch, and man, I couldn't be more excited to attend this conference in August. And they have it twice a year, August and March, I believe. So my little shout out to the Maxwell Group there. They create some pretty good leaders. But Jamaal, appreciate being on the show, man. I'll see you here in 3 weeks.
Yes.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leadership Secrets Podcast. Please join us next time as we bring you more leadership secrets from the people who are actually doing it. See you soon.